You're listening to the Boss Yourself First podcast, Season 3, Episode 4. We're talking about permission to feel, where emotions aren't the enemy, they're the guide, my friends. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Boss Yourself First podcast, where we give you the tools to lead from the inside out. So listen up. Have you ever been told emotions do not belong at work? Or maybe you even received feedback that you're just too emotional. I tell you what, I have had multiple clients come in with this experience. I'm willing to bet some of you out there can relate. Or do you feel like you spend a lot of time wrestling to keep emotions under control? Maybe you even disconnect from feeling so much that now you're a little worried that you don't feel enough. It's complicated. It is complicated. But I want to put a thought out there and see how it lands with you. Based on the work of Jill Taylor Bolt, who's a Harvard-trained neuroanatomist, humans are not thinking beings that feel, but instead are feeling beings that think. And maybe this is already your conclusion, but I can also find scientists, usually they're grounded in cognitive behavioral theory, that focus on how our thoughts determine our feelings. I personally believe that both can be true. Some of us first and more easily access and process information with our feelings. It's just easier. We're just wired that way. And while at the same time, I believe some of us access and process information first in our thoughts. That's kind of how our brains feel ease of access. However you most easily translate the world around you, emotions first or thinking first, both your thoughts and feelings are important to the process. And not to downplay the role of thinking, but most often I find that my clients are snagged by feelings when it comes to accomplishing goals or leading effectively, communicating clearly. And because of their beliefs or their desire to avoid uncomfortable feelings, they show up somewhere along sort of a feeling spectrum where one end is the choice to disconnect from feelings altogether, and the other end is emotional overwhelm or feeling a victim of strong feelings. Wherever you are, wherever you land on that feeling spectrum, this permission we're unpacking will help. Because today we're diving into a permission that so many high-achieving, people-pleasing, keep-it-together types, including me, struggle to give themselves permission to feel. I think somewhere along the way, we got the message that emotions are stumbling blocks to be avoided, that they get in the way of logic, that they make us less credible or less professional. But let's clear something up right now. Emotions aren't the problem. Avoiding them is the problem. And I talk about this in the book, but I want to bring it forward here. Giving yourself permission to feel creates space. Space to appreciate the richness of being a human, space to make choices that build others up, and space to keep moving forward. Emotions aren't here to derail you. They're here to direct you toward what matters. Last week, we talked about permission principles, and we're going to continue to apply those here: approach, adjust, and act. We're going to permit ourselves to look at the role feelings play and how they can be leveraged to collect data. And hopefully, you'll feel inspired and empowered to approach your own emotions by observing them, by labeling them. And in that way, you can adjust your beliefs about emotions. You can take action to partner with your feelings for better understanding about what's important to you. Because when you allow yourself to feel, you're not being indulgent, you're being informed. So let's dive in. Let's talk for a minute about brain science. Not the dry kind. This is not going to become a lecture class. But just a little aha moment here. Emotions are processed faster than thought. And because of this, many believe that emotions are that initial information processors, like I already said. Neuroscientist Dr. Antonio Damasio, his research revealed that feeling is what makes decision-making possible. When he looked at patients with damage to the emotional centers of the brain, and they were asked to make even simple choices like, what do they want to eat? They got stuck. Turns out logic doesn't work in a vacuum. Emotion gives logic meaning, and we rely on both feeling and thinking. They work together. So here's another little nugget. The amygdala, that tiny little piece of your brain, if you're watching the video, I'll show you the brain model. This tiny little thing, the amygdala. And if you're not watching the video, that's okay. Trust me, it's a tiny little part of the brain deep in the center of your brain. It's one of the earliest formed parts of the brain, the amygdala. And it's often blamed for emotional outbursts. It's not just a panic button, though. It's a pattern recognition system. It's constantly scanning for what matters: safety, risk, meaning, and it triggers emotional signals. So the amygdala's got all this power, busy scanning, using a lot of energy. But when we acknowledge and name an emotion, another part of our brain lights up. Another part of our brain starts demanding some energy. And because our brains are efficient, the amygdala has to calm down. The other part that activates is the ventrolateral prefrontal cortex, this part up here, the last part of your brain to develop also. And this part is responsible for regulation and decision clarity. So in short, let's just sum up. Avoiding emotions increases reactivity. Naming emotions improves response and reasoning. Suppressing emotions, it can cause your brain to burn extra energy, decrease cognitive performance, and increase physical stress responses. So one of the biggest leadership myths out there is that emotions cloud judgment. The truth is, they clarify it if we're willing to approach them. That's what we're doing. We're having a good look, exercising approach. Permission to feel is performance enhancing, not detrimental. Okay, so let me tell you a story from my own experience. I was in a particularly intense season, caregiving, coaching, working on the book, and I just kept pushing. Keep it together, I told myself. Then one morning, I literally just opened my laptop and something broke a little bit. I just started tearing up. No warning, no dramatic buildup, just overwhelmed that had run out of places to go. So my first thought was, this is not productive. This is supposed to be work time. I have very limited time, a lot of pressure on the schedule. I'm supposed to jump in and get some things done. This is not productive. My second thought, this is not a weakness. This is wisdom knocking. And in that moment, and I have to say, this wasn't just an epiphany that came down. It's because of all the work I've done around this. But in that moment, I gave myself permission to approach what was happening inside. It really wasn't a comfortable choice, but I felt like it was really important. And the moment became a turning point, not because I fixed anything, because instead I faced something. So I sat with it. I labeled the feelings: fatigue, frustration that I couldn't pull myself together, shame about not feeling like enough. I let go of being self-judgmental, and I embraced compassion with curiosity. And I asked these emotions that were showing up what they wanted me to know. Here's what they told me. You're tired. You care about your work and family. You need to rest and get some extra support before you break. And that's when I wrote this sentence that actually made it into the book. Permission to feel is not a license to act on every emotion, but it is an invitation to listen. And that moment didn't derail me. It actually recalibrated me. Let me give you another example, one from a client who was a leader in a high-pressure tech environment and came to coaching because she was experiencing massive burnout, only she hadn't quite identified it. She hadn't really named it, couldn't understand exactly what had changed that caused this. But when we started looking at her schedule, we approached it, right? We started looking at her schedule and her emotional bandwidth. It became really clear. She was bypassing. She was suppressing some feelings that were coming up around grief and frustration, even pride. She was just kind of stuffing them into a deal with it later drawer, or the Scarlett O'Hara approach that I always think of if you're a Gone with the Wind fan and are familiar with that whole I'll think about it tomorrow moment. But when she gave herself permission to feel, to take those things out of the drawer, really look at them, understand why they were showing up, not just once, but as a habit. And remember, this wasn't a once and done thing. This was layered work together and her intentional practice. But she created a habit around permitting herself to feel. She was able to identify specific feelings, to understand why they were showing up, and gain clarity about what actually needed to change. She set boundaries. She had brave conversations. And she started not just surviving this season of work, She started leading in a way that felt authentic and powerful and meaningful. And that's the difference that permission makes. All right, gang, I like to have some application for you. So let's look at how you could actually apply this. Here's a really simplified framework that I hope feels accessible. If it doesn't, please let me know. But I've shared this before, probably in my early seasons, because this is feelings work that goes way back to the beginning of my practice. But also, I've shared it with clients. I've shared it from stage. And the responses that I get are that this is helpful. I would love to hear your response to it. But it's very simple. It's 4 pieces: feel, name, translate, and choose. So feel feels a little obvious, perhaps, but a little on the nose because we're doing permission to feel. So the first thing is to feel. But sometimes we don't even notice. I want to invite you to pause long enough to notice what's going on. Feelings show up in a lot of ways. I want you to notice, how does this feel in your body? Is your chest tightening? Do your shoulders raise? Does your mind race? Are you feeling restless? That kind of energy? Name that emotion. Give it language. Go beyond "I'm feeling fine" or "I'm feeling stressed." Even "I'm feeling angry." Get super specific. It's called emotional granularity. Get specific about it. Is it dread? Is it excitement? Is it resentment? Get specific labeling your feelings, because naming activates clarity because of that work in the prefrontal cortex lighting up, the amygdala being forced to calm down, and then you can really observe and look at it. This is that powerful piece. So you felt it, you have named it. Now let's translate it. You're clear on what it is you're feeling and what it feels like in your body. Ask, what are these emotions telling me? Remember, it's an invitation to listen. Usually emotions are telling you that something you highly value is being threatened or challenged or even confirmed. Remember, not all emotions are undesirable or challenging. Some are like joy and excitement, anticipation. So sometimes it's a value that is being threatened. Sometimes it's a value that's being affirmed. But notice what it's there for. And then choose. Based on the message that you get, when you ask for the data from the feelings that are showing up, based on that data, what actions do you want to choose? I always say emotions are powerful teachers and terrible masters. They can inform your behavior, but you still drive the car. Remember that space to choose. I told you about my choices based on this practice. I told you about my clients' choices with this work. Informed, intentional choosing helps you lead yourself instead of being led by reactions. And when we act from a place of emotional clarity, we act with more power and less regret. Sounds good, right? All right, here's your invitation this week. Choose 1 moment a day to check in. Ask, what am I feeling right now? What do I need to name? What message is that emotion delivering? And based on that information, what actions do I need to take? Remember, feel, name, translate, choose. You don't have to be perfect. You do have to give yourself permission to be present with your feelings. And if you're used to avoiding your feelings, hey, welcome to the club. But just like a muscle, your emotional awareness gets stronger the more you practice. That's why I invite you to do this once a day. Just check in. Build that muscle. Permission to feel isn't weakness. It's wisdom in motion. It's what helps you live with intention, not reaction. It's what makes you magnetic as a leader, a friend, a human. So give yourself permission this week, not to fix every emotion, but to face them. This is self-leadership. This is permission. You don't have to push feelings away to prove your strength. You just have to be brave enough to face them. And if this episode gave you some language for something you've been facing lately, share it. DM me on Instagram at bossyourselffirst, or email me at robin@bossyourselffirst.com, or post about it and tag me in your reflection. I love hearing how these practices are landing with you. Also, if you know someone a little snagged by their feelings, send them this episode. And if you want to take a deeper dive on the permission to feel, you can get a copy of 3 Permissions. It'll be available July 29th. And please subscribe to my email list with the link in the show notes or at bossyourselffirst.com. And stay tuned, my friends, because we've got so much more coming your way in this season of permission. Remember, you can't lead yourself or others if you are emotionally absent, but when you give yourself permission to feel, you become someone who leads with compassion, clarity, and courage. So until next time, my friends, take care.